All right, I'm here this morning with Mr. Bob Horras. Thank you for coming out, Mr. Horras. This is something we've talked about for a little while, and I'm excited to hear about it. He's going to share some of the history of our Mokena schools and how the districts were formed and that. But before we get into that really interesting information, share with people why, because you're no longer a Mokena resident, but talk about your past. You grew up in Mokena, right?
Well, I grew up in Mokena. My wife was from Mokena. Our families have been here forever.
A lot of the names we talk about in the Mokena history are tied to both of your families, right?
Right. This is where our roots are. It's always been home and always will be home.
So, there's not a lot of people, and you've been fortunate to gain a lot, gather together a lot of the collectibles and things over the years. But a lot of people don't carry that interest anymore. Why have you kind of kept that interest in the history of Mokena over these years?
Well, like I said, our families were some of the first settlers in Frankfort Township, and I've always been, involved in history, and I always like to kind of ask myself, what would it be like back then?
Yeah.
And when you start doing that, then you find these different things that, well, this is what they did then, and 50 years later, this is what we do now. To me, it's just interesting.
Yeah. And you've got an immense collection, as I said, of Mokena history. Can you point out maybe one of your favorite things that you've gotten, one of your prized collection pieces?
Probably the most prized thing that I never knew existed until a few years ago, and it might be the only one left in the world, is that Mokena Mineral Springs bottle from around 1905, something like that. So it was,
and that whole business has such an interesting history, and how it became such a large business in town and then just went away, right?
That was part of the medicine man thing back then.
Sure.
I mean, everybody was making concoctions and selling them for health, and there was no government agencies to say this is really bad for you or this is good for you. But people had in their mind that water with a lot of iron in it was good for you, so they started a bottling plant. Yeah. The bottling plant was not here. They put the water in the tankers on the railroad and shipped it to Chicago, and that's where they bottled the water.
Oh, yeah, really interesting. Great, such a great story, and it became that farm became one of the major downtown neighborhoods, right? Once after the World War II, developed.
Yeah, that was finally developed after World War II. So
and I love that, and you just feel the charm of that area. But we get off track, and we've had some great conversations. You shared some great history, and hopefully we'll be able to do more of that in the future. But what is your hope with sharing this information about the schools?
Okay. What this is, this might have started 30, 40 years ago, reading some articles. And especially, and I'll get into this in the program, I didn't realize that my grandfather's farm, he annexed it to Mokena School District. And wow, that's, and then I found another map on what the school boundaries looked like in 1905. And wow, okay, now how did we get here? And gradually over time, people give you things and you talk to people, and it just comes together, and yeah.
And what is your hope? What do you think? What do you hope to get out of this, sharing it with the community?
Well, Dad, it's a permanent history.
Yeah.
I don't believe anyone on the school board knows how we got to these boundaries. I know they don't.
Yeah.
Because I've talked to some people on the school board. They had no clue how we got to where we are today. It's
really an interesting part of the town's history,
well,
and
it is. It's
one that most people would not give a lot of attention to. As you said, you just kind of go with.
So
I don't want to. You've got some awesome, really good information. So I don't want to delay any longer.
Okay.
And I know you said this is very extensive, but there are definitely things that could be missed or might have been left out or still coming together as you've gathered. So we definitely leave that. So with that, present the Mokena School District 159, a brief history.
Thank you very much. And this is going to be more like a class lecture because there's so much here I can't possibly remember it all. And this will be a history from the inception of the school district to about 1903, after they built the new junior high in Grassmere. Good evening. My name is Robert Horras, and hopefully some of you folks still remember me or at least recognize the name. I was born and raised in Mokena, went through all 8 grades here, and attended Lincoln Way High School. I'm a Mokena historian, collector, and author of the book, The Evolution of the Mokena Jr Farm. Now, the book is available for reading at the Mokena Public Library. I was president of the original Mokena Historical Society in 1984 and 85. I served on the Mokena Planning and Zoning Boards for 25 years and was president of that board from 1984 to 2005. Now, 2 of my family lines, the George Laufer Sr. and the Nicholas Marty Sr. families, were very early settlers of the area. The Laufer family arrived here in 1847, and in fact, he sold some of his farm to the Rock Island Railroad for the right-of-way. The Marty family came here in 1851, before Mokena was founded. My wife Valerie was raised in Mokena, went all 8 years here to grade school, and went on to Lincoln Way. Her family line, of course, is the Tuttles, Bumgardners, and Junker families, all very old families of the township. Her parents owned Mokena Sales on Front Street for over 40 years, and her father, Will Tuttle, was mayor of Mokena for 8 years, from 1969 to 1977. Mokena is home for us, and this is where our roots are located. After our retirement in 2005, and being in Mokena all our lives, we decided we needed a little change and relocated to Princeton, Illinois. We're just 90 miles west of here, and we're back in town at least once a month to visit grandchildren and friends. The presentation you're going to see tonight started over 30 years ago as a history project to discover how the grade school went from a one-room school with 26 students in 1847, which is almost 180 years ago, to the size it is today. The project eventually turned into a short history of the grade school district, and I hope you enjoy the program and learn something. The current boundaries of the school system we'll start on the eastern edge. This is 1/2 mile west of Route 45 on 183rd Street to the town line boundaries between New Lenox and Frankfort Township, south of the right-of-way on Interstate 80, west to the approximate extension of what's 191st Street, and east to Town Line Road. This is the area is known as Rolling Heights. From Town Line Road straight south to the Old Plank Trail, east to Wolf Road, north to Route 30, and just east of what is the Frankfort Township offices, north to Hickory Creek, meandering through the Forest Preserve, and finally up to Route 45, 1/4 mile east then to Route 45, north a 1/2 mile, and then back that 1/2 mile and straight north to our beginning point on 183rd Street. This is approximately 12 square miles. Well, how did we get here? It's quite interesting. Now, this is an 1893 map. We're going to use this map for the rest of the talk for consistency, and we have laid out the roads on this map here. Now, according to the historian George Woodruff, the public school system was actually started when the state and federal governments were laying out the townships in 1818. The government stated that the 16th section, that's 1/36 of each township, was to be used for the support of public schools. Now that means that the township school treasurer and trustees could sell, rent, or do whatever they wanted with the land in section 16, which was 640 acres. And all the money received was to be used for the public school systems in that township. All section 16s are 1 square mile of land located in the center of each township. Section 16 in Frankfort Township is bordered on the north by LaPorte Road, on the east by Route 45, west to 104th Avenue, and south to the approximate area of Lincoln Way Lane in Frankfort. Or for a better description, go to the corner of LaPorte and Route 45, go 1 mile west and 1 mile south. That is section 16. and I'll continue quoting George Woodruff. The donation of the general government of the 16th section of each township of the public lands 136th was made by the same act which provided for their survey. It was a most generous donation on the part of our parental government and was designed to furnish a nucleus at least of a general system of education, and although many of these sections were prematurely sold and the anvils of such sales have in many instances been squandered, still the fund derived from this and other sources lightens to some extent the taxes raised for school purposes. Now continuing with Woodruff, the present system of schools assumed substantially its present shape somewhere around the year 1850. The duties of the school commissioners were previously confined to the charge of the school funds, and the duties of the school trustees in each township to the 16th section and the care of the township fund. It's greatly to be regretted that the people have been so careless in their selection of school officials. These should be selected with the greatest care and from the best, wisest, and most responsible for citizens without regard to politics. Some townships have paid dearly for their carelessness in this regard, and still what ought to elicit interest is really treated as of little importance, end quote. Well, he could be talking about today rather than 180 years ago with the politics. You can imagine what happened and how it happened. Now, luckily, Section 16 in Frankfort Township was actually a very valuable and saleable piece of property. Most of this section was wooded, but some townships were not so lucky. Some townships had their school land in the middle of rivers, swamps, or just open prairie, making them less valuable. Now, in 1836, the trustee of the school land in Frankfort Township was Foster Kane, Francis Owen, and Allen Denny. Now, on July 13, 1836, the trustees put all the school land up for sale in 10-acre parcels. Each of the 64 parcels was for sale for $150 apiece. The buyer would put down 25%, or $37.50. The rest was payable over 3 years and 3 annual payments. The interest would be due every 6 months. These 10-acre parcels made sense because most of this section was wooded. So now the farmers could purchase these parcels and use the wooded property for fence posts and firewood. Now, if all the properties were sold for what they wanted, the trustees would have netted $9,600 for the township school funds. Was this a good deal? Well, $9,600 back in the 1830s was a lot of money. Now, considering that the government was selling the land for $1.25 an acre. So, I do not know if all the parcels were sold at this price, but according to an 1863 township school report, all the land had been sold by 1863. Now, prior to 1901, there were 10 school districts in Frankfort Township. Just as today, each township had its own boundaries and tax rates, but regrettably, I've been unable to locate a map showing the exact boundaries of what they were in the 1800s. Now, each district had 3 school directors. The township school trustees handled all the finances. Taxes were collected by the township and put into the school fund. Anytime funds were needed to pay bills, a voucher was written and given to the township treasurer for payment. This amount was then deducted from the school district's balance. Very simple. Now, the first school in Frankfort Township was a little school built in Section 19 sometime around the year 1834. This is according to Woodruff's History of Will County. It was most likely located near Hickory Creek. The creeks and the rivers were the roads of the frontier, and there were generally paths alongside them. The first teacher was Mrs. Hiram Wood. Now, Section 19 is on the western edge of Frankfort Township. Currently, Route 30 bisects Section 19. Hickory Creek is right up here, and I think that's where the school was located. And most of this land is owned by the Will County Forest Preserve. Now, by 1847, Frankfort Township had at least 7 school districts. Even though there was no Mokena, this area, the future Mokena area, was designated as District Number 7. The official name was District 7, Township 35 North, Range 12 East of the 3rd Principal Meridian. After looking at an 1870s map and reading the 1860 school reports, I believe the first Mokena school building was located at or near what is now 10402 LaPorte Road, right here on the curve of LaPorte Road. The first written records I've found for District 7 date back to 1847. The winter term started on Friday, December 23rd, and there were 26 students from 14 families. Now, believe it or not, 2 of those families, the Sheik and Maui families, are still in this area. They did attend school on Saturday, December 24th, but did not attend any more Saturdays until the following summer. There were no breaks or holidays until the last day of school on Thursday, March 16, 1848. And the teacher for this session was Reuben Egerton, and he was paid $33.77 for this session. The attendance records indicated that the next session started on Monday, May 8, 1848, and this lasted until October 27, 1848. Now, during this time, this session, they did attend school 1 or 2 Saturdays a month, but did not attend on the 4th of July. There was no perfect attendance, and some students only came 1 or 2 days a week. There was another break, and school began again in December. Now, certain standards were set. The teachers had to have, and I quote, a legal certificate of qualification and show good moral character, end quote, before being employed. The school district had to certify that the school was, and I quote again, an English one, in which the English language was the medium of communication, end quote. Now, in 1852, the Rock Island Railroad comes through the area. The village of Mokena is founded, and this changed everything. Now, 1855. This is a 1870s photo of what was called the Village Green. This is, none of these churches were here in 1855. Here's the first school in town that was built in 1855. A second school, one-room school was constructed in District 7. This one built in town at a cost of $1,000. It was built in the Village Green area approximately 100 feet north of 2nd Street and approximately 150 feet west of Union Street, where St. John's Church has a parking lot. It was a single-room building with a little bell on top. The original school outside Mokena on LaPorte Road was still being used. So Mokena had 2 schools at that time in 1855. Mokena was not the only place building schools. Frankfort built theirs in 1856, and on the southeast corner of 187th Street and Wolf Road, where a gas station is now located, the Marty Schoolhouse was built in 1861. Now, this happens to be a picture of that Marty School. This is a picture from around 1905, but that's the Marty School. Most rural schools received their names from the families that donated the land for these schools. Now, the township was booming. In 1850, there was only 840 inhabitants of the whole township, but by 1860, the population had doubled. In 1863, there were 10 school districts with 21 schools, 21 teachers, but only 11 schoolhouses. That means that a lot of the schools, classes were being held in homes. Now, Mokena School District had 2 of those schoolhouses, 2 of the 11. The other 10 schools, like I said, were in homes, which was very common in those days. In 1863, school was only in session for an average of 7 months. The original school on LaPorte Road had 19 students. The teacher was Lydia Kuhn, and the school in town had 59 students, and the average daily attendance for that was 40, and the teacher was Mary Reed. Now, by 1870, The township population was 1,925. The school trustee report of July 31st, 1870 states that there were 10 school districts with 11 schools and 21 teachers, and Mokena had 2 schools, the one on LaPorte Road and the one in town. Now, about 1870, according to Will County records, there was approximately 430 youth under the age of 21 in the Mokena School District 7. Mokena was growing rapidly. Now, in October 1871, 2 tons of coal was purchased for $38 and delivered to the schoolhouse. I believe it was the schoolhouse in town. It was the fee for delivering it was $3.20 for a total of $41.20. Because this was not paid until February 1872, 10% interest was charged, $1.02 for late payment. So, now, 1870. Due to overcrowding, April 14th, 1870, an election was held for the building of a new school in Mokena School District 7. This new school would combine the 2 one-room schoolhouses and have room for a school population growth. 79 voters went to the polls, but only 74 people voted on the school building referendum. The results were 44 for building a new school, 17 against, 12 for and against. This might mean the voters were for the district but against the new school, and 1 for school. This information was taken directly from the school district, the school director's poll book. It's possible that the voters were told to write their choice on the ballot, and several voters were just confused what to say. The referendum passed. This is a copy of the official tally of that poll in 1870. Well, the bond issue passed. So in 1872, Mokena School District 7 builds its 3rd school building. It's located on the northwest corner of Front Street and Schoolhouse Road and was constructed for $10,000. The cost included furnishings. It was acclaimed to be one of the finest schools in Will County. According to insurance records, it was a 4-room, 2-story, 25-foot high, 45-foot wide by 78-foot long wooden structure with metal gutters. It had 5 coal-burning stoves attached to a single chimney. The coal shed was located west of the school, and the stoves had zinc under them to help prevent fires. After the ashes from these stoves were cold, they were spread into the streets. Now, the sun was the only source of light available to the children. Large windows were installed to allow in the maximum amount of light. Kerosene lamps were used in the building for meetings 1 night a week. There was a boys and girls outhouse that had no heat or water about 25 feet behind the building. And there was no running water in the building either. It was pumped by hand every morning from the outside well and brought into the school building. At this time, I believe the original 1840 school on LaPorte Road was probably sold or abandoned. Now, according to an article in Mokena News Bulletin about this time, there was a problem with one child. He was an orphan child named George Gimble, who was living with the Brumman family. He was a great tobacco chewer, and it was said he could spit the farthest of any boy in school. Oh, the problems. Now, this is an accurate picture of 1872 after the school was built on Schoolhouse Road and Front Street. The school built in 1855 was not abandoned. In March 1873, it was sold to St. John's Church for its private German school. The building was sold for $470 at 10% interest payable in 2 years. In 1878, it was moved from its original location in the village green and attached to the church's parsonage at what is now 11125 3rd Street for use as a hall. Now, this is a picture of the parsonage from the front, and this is this part is the school attached to the home. And this is a picture of the back of the parsonage, and this is the original Mokena School building. Now, about 1925, this old school was detached from the school church's parsonage, turned 90 degrees, and converted into a home. It's still located at 11121 3rd Street. This is a 1926 photo of that home. And this is a 2011 photo of that home. So this is one of the oldest buildings in town, and it can definitely be dated at 1855. I've been in the basement of that, and you can see exactly the timbers and where the routing was for the entryway. It's very, very interesting. Now, in 1873, only Mokena and Frankfort were graded schools. All the other schools were common schools with all grades in one room, and everyone had to walk or ride a horse to school. Now, as far back as the 1870s, there were residency disputes about coming to schools. The one I discovered involved a farmer who lived just over the Mokena's boundary line in New Lenox Township. His home was in New Lenox Township, but he farmed and owned land in Mokena School District. He could not understand why he paid taxes to Mokena schools but could not send his son there. The school district prevailed, and the boy was not allowed to attend Mokena schools. Now, by 1880, the township population was 2,127, and the township school enrollment was 524 students with 15 teachers. Mokena's enrollment was approximately 80 students with 4 teachers. Excuse me. Also in 1880, the Mokena School building was valued at $12,000. But because of the great fire danger, insurance for the building was divided amongst several insurers. But in order to save school funds, the building was only insured for $6,000. $3,500 was paid by the Underwriters Agency of New York. $1,000 of the insurance was by German Insurance Company of Freeport, Illinois, and finally $1,500 was by Aetna Insurance of Hartford, Connecticut. Aetna's fee for insuring $1,500 for 1 year was $18.75. Now, in 1881, a new 250-pound solid brass bell was purchased from the McShane Bell Foundry in Philadelphia. It was shipped by rail to Plainfield and delivered by wagon to Mokena. Now, why it was delivered by wagon from Plainfield and not shipped on the Rock Island Railroad to Mokena is a mystery. The bell was on display on the southeast section of the old junior high school on 195th Street. I do not know where the bell is currently located. In 1883, a state law was enacted requiring each student in Illinois to attend school at least 3 months per year. Now, this is a student body class picture, approximately 1885. Good-looking group. In 1901, there was a big change for all the schools in the state of Illinois. County school superintendents were taking school control away from the township officials, and all school districts in the state of Illinois were given new numbers. The number change was required because prior to that time, when the township government controlled the schools, each township had a district 1, 2, 3, and so forth. Since Will County had 25 townships, that means there was 25 District 1s, 25 District 2s, and so on. An 1876 County Superintendent of Schools reports tells of the problems, and I quote, "Will County is, as you are aware, quite irregular in shape and embraces an area of 840 square miles, having 208 school districts, 624 school directors, 75 township trustees, and at present 25 township treasurers for a total of 724 school officers," end quote. Without having telephones, etc., it must have been chaos. But that's for another time in discussion. So in 1901, all school districts were given county school numbers. On July 1st, 1901, Mokena's school name and number was changed from District 7, Township 35 North, Range 12 East of the 3rd Principal Meridian to Will County School District 159. We got 159 because that's where we were on the list. No other reason. So, now this is a map from, this was an official map from 1901 that shows all the school districts in Frankfort Township. Now Mokena's boundaries in 1901 were 191st Street on the north, south, west, okay, this is Town Line Road, and what would be 191st Street, south on Town Line Road to 203rd Street. Now, 203rd Street is the road just south of St. John's Cemetery. So that was the boundary line. It went east from there, 1/4 mile short of Route 45, and then up, that would be 1 mile, and then west to where you're 1/2 mile west of Route 45, and then back to 191st Street. You can see where the railroad tracks cross 191st Street, somewhere in that area right there was the original boundary in 1901. This is an area of approximately 4 square miles. Now, these boundaries would not change until 1933. Frankfort Township was down to 8 school districts with 1 school in each district. Now, notice how these boundaries are nice and straight. Mokena's is almost square. Marty School District up here is nice and square, and everything changes. Now, this is a student body photo from about 1902. This is the Mokena graduating class of 1904. Now, Mr. J. Cunningham, the teacher, he had been there for many, many years in the school district. Now, in 1913, a 2-year high school program is started. It occupies 1 of the 4 rooms in the school. Grades 1, 2, and 3 were in 1 room, 4, 5, and 6 in another, 7th and 8th grades in another, and finally the 2-year high school in the last one. These were the same room assignments that would be in place for the next 31 years until 1944 when the high school is discontinued. Now, this is a photo of the 1914 graduating classes. This is the 8th grade graduation class, and this is the first high school graduating class. The professor is Mr. Elke. By 1920, the Frankfort Township population was declining. It was down to 1,700 inhabitants, and only 296 children were enrolled in all the township schools. Now, part of this decline was due to the new farm technology. Farms were getting larger, and farm implements got better and more efficient, so fewer farms and farm families. Now, this is a photo of the 1920s. These are school children waiting for school to begin. You can see the coal shed right here behind the students. This is a photo of the 20s also. Now, this is Francis Sorensen being dropped off at school. Now, Francis would later marry Norval Robinson, and they became lifelong residents of Mokena, very active in the community. Now, May 6, 1922, Mr. John Blaz urged the school board to purchase new playground equipment. The board, and I quote, found not having any money for that purpose, the money was to be solicited. Well, something must have happened, because on August 21st, 1922, the school board purchased 4 teeter boards, 1 slide bump, a 2-suite swing, and a giant stride. The new playground equipment was installed on September 22nd. Now, by 1927, even this new equipment was proving dangerous. Now remember, at the time, there was no telephone in the school, and the sides of the slides were made out of wood. Now, here's the story. Now, my aunt, Marie Horras, she related this to me, and the details are confirmed in a Mokena News Bulletin article of June 10th, 1927. It was a beautiful day, and the children were lined up to go down the slide. My aunt, Marie, was fourth in line. Iris Hamilton went down the slide first. Now, the following is from the News Bulletin, and this confirms the story my aunt told me. Iris, and I quote, was seriously injured on the slide, part of the school ground play equipment, when a long sliver of wood entered her leg, severing 2 arteries. Professor Ewell was called and saw the child was fast bleeding to death. He at once saw the great danger she was in. He stopped the flow of blood by pressing his thumbs against the severed artery. He succeeded in stopping further loss of blood until medical help arrived 45 minutes later. The quick action and thought of Professor Ewell was the only factor that prevented the child from bleeding to death, end quote. The screams were horrible. My aunt could still hear those screams 80 years later. And Iris had problems for the rest of her life because of this accident. School year 1922-23. It cost $10,000 to operate the school for that year. $5,100 was spent on salaries. There were 4 teachers. Professor Brown, who was a teacher and principal, received $1,800. The other teachers made about $1,100 apiece. The other $4,900 was used for school improvements, such as playground equipment, $350, 2 Victrolas, and for the people who don't know, a Victrola was a record player, $115 each, and finally electric lighting was installed and city water was brought into the school, doing away with the outdoor pump. The school board of directors said, and I quote, felt this school should be in the lead and should have every modern advantage, but they still had 2 outhouses. Now, on April 20th, 1923, only 4 votes were cast in the school board election. James Cooper was elected without any opposition. May 27th, 1924, the school puts on an operetta called Elma the Fairy Child. The music was provided by Wachter's Orchestra. 1925, a 3rd year of high school is added. This only lasted 2 years, and $318 was authorized for the purchase of 5 typewriters. Teachers that year were making $1,350 each, and the principal was earning $2,400. Now, apparently, the 1923 improvements were not enough. For on April 10th, 1926, a referendum was held for the issuing of $4,500 in bonds for the purchase of land in the Bronze subdivision for a new school. This land was at the corner of Carpenter and Division Streets. Now, 2 years later, on May 19th, 1928, a special election was held to authorize $29,000 in bonds to build a new school. The bond issue passed. Now, on October 26, 1928, the cornerstone was laid. Now, this is a picture of the school under construction. You can still see the arches today if you go over to the village hall. The school was to have, and I quote, all the modern conveniences, excellent ventilation, heat, indoor plumbing, indoor drinking fountains, spacious halls, and plenty of light. Now, according to a news article, the dirt to fill in the schoolyard was taken from the excavation of the subway underneath the Rock Island Railroad on what was old U.S. Route 45 just north of 191st Street. The article stated that there was a caravan of trucks down that road bringing the dirt into the school. Now, this is a picture of the school. This photo is actually from about 1935, but this is the completed building. The school opened in the fall of 1929. The Carpenter Street School, as it was called, was Mokena's fourth school building in the district. It was constructed at a cost of $29,000. It had 4 school rooms, all on one level, a gymnasium for sports, and a stage for plays and concerts. Now Mokena could have sports teams, but the real problem, as we will see, it still only had 4 rooms. When the school opened, there was 129 students in the 4 rooms, 35 in grades 1, 2, and 3, 39 in grades 4, 5, and 6, 28 in grades 7 and 8, and finally 27 in the 2-year, 1-room high school. There was no office for the principal. The principal worked out of a desk at the end of the hall. Now, this is a picture of Mokena's high school first basketball team. This was from school year 30-31. And this is a photo of Mokena's first grade school basketball team. And this gentleman right here is Mr. Ed Junker, who ended up selling his farm to the Mokena Park District. Now, during the forming of the basketball teams, the coach announced the teams needed colors and a name. He asked for ideas, and Ed Walsh, an assistant coach and recent graduate of the high school, suggested green and white as colors. Apparently there was no objection or any other idea, so green and white it was. As for the name Meteors, there is no history on how that name was obtained. 1931, 2 high school newspapers are published, the Sophomore Arrow and the Freshie Freshman. Now, June 1st, 1933, 2 decisions are made. The first one was the dissolving of the Marty School District 160. That was the one directly north of Mokena in this area right here. For many years, the students have been coming to Mokena on a paid tuition basis. The school was located on the southwest corner of 187th and Wolf Road, where a gas station is located. The entire school district was annexed into Mokena School District 159. Now, the second decision was the annexation of the 80-acre Emmanuel Marty farm down here on this corner, right here. That was on the northwest corner of LaPorte and Route 45. At Mr. Marty's request, his farm was detached from Frankfort School District 157 and transferred to Mokena School District 159. Now, Mr. Marty, he just happens to be my grandfather. He did most of his business in Mokena, went to church there, and so wanted his children to go to school there. These 2 additions to Mokena Grade School moved the boundaries north to 183rd Street, where they are now, and east a 1/4 mile to Route 45 and north 1/2 mile. And this brought the school district to a little over 4 square miles. So the school board can thank my grandparents for all the tax dollars they are receiving from the commercial property along Route 45. April 1934, the old schools are sold. A referendum to sell the Front Street School and recently acquired Marty School was held on April 14, 1934. Vote to sell Front Street School was 218 for and 7 against. To sell the Marty School was 219 for the sale and 6 against. Lester Sheik brought the Front Street School for $325, and Mr. Sheik took the building apart and used the wood to build several homes in town. Now, John Junker purchased for his farm 1 outhouse for $5. Now, my wife Valerie might be one of the last persons alive to sit on that outhouse, okay? For John Junker was her great-grandfather. Ed Marshall bought the other schoolhouse for $7 and, he bought the other outhouse for $7.50, and Walter Haas purchased the old Marty School for $77. The school bell was apparently taken down and given to the fire department for storage. Now, by the fall of 1934, there were now 163 students, 90 boys in 73 schools enrolled in a 4-room school. Brand new 4-room school. This is only 5 years after the school was built. Now, Mokena was apparently very ahead of its time in the 1930s. It had girls' basketball teams. Now, this is a picture of the 33-34 girls' high school basketball. Now, there was only 16 girls in the high school at the time, but look how many girls were on the basketball team. Now, this is a school year 1934-35 high school basketball photo. And this is a 1935-36 grade school basketball photo. Now, I believe, and at this time there was only 17 girls in 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. And I believe the girls' basketball program was dropped due to lack of players. Now, school year 1934-35, the high school basketball team. These poor guys. Okay. The high school team was put in a very difficult position. In the early 1930s, district tournaments were the first round of the IHSA state playoff format. There was no separate divisions, and it didn't matter what size school it was. And this led to some very tough mismatches. On Friday, March 7th, 1935, Mokena was involved in one such match. On that date, Mokena, a 2-year high school of 36 students, 18 of those were boys, was paired against Joliet Township High School. Joliet was a 4-year school with approximately 1,000 students. Well, you can guess what happened. Joliet won 136-5. Mokena got into the record books, but on the losing end. But according to the News Bulletin, Mokena on Sunday, March 9th, now this is only 2 days after their loss, after their loss from Joliet, they, and I quote, redeemed themselves by defeating Wilton Center team at Mokena 126-26. So they redeemed themselves 2 days later. By 1935-36 school year, the Great Depression was in full swing. All teachers' salaries had been cut by 1/3. The teachers were now making $945 a year, and the principal was earning $1,600. In April 1937, the county superintendent of schools sends a letter to Mokena School Board stating that the school superintendent is not being paid enough and the school should add more classrooms and teachers. That was ignored. So, now, October 1936, a Mokena band is formed. A group of parents think the school should have a band. It's organized in 1936 and continues until 1944, when the high school is discontinued. The band is totally sponsored and funded by the band parents group. The school board would have nothing to do with it. This is a photo of the band in about 1940 in front of Pioneer Cemetery. Mokena's first student council. This is from the school year 1938-39. Now seated left to right, Virginia Nebaker, Catherine Reed, Jean Shovlin, my mother, Corrine Marty, and Pat Bennett. Standing left to right, Robert Hummerding, Ed Tierney, Gordon Speece. Now Gordon's nickname was Torchy. His hair was fiery red, so he got the nickname Torchy. And Bill Hummerding, and finally George Merrick. Also that year, student enrollment reaches 172 in a 4-room school. This is a choir from school year 1939-1940. The grade school and high school students participated in these and other activities They all considered themselves part of the same school. Now in 1940, wind-up clocks were replaced by electric clocks in the school. So everything was going well. May 1941, with World War II looming, patriotism was a big factor. On May 9th, 1941, Mokena grades 1 through 5 present a pageant in 5 episodes called 300 Years of Patriotism. October 5th, 1942, the school board wrote, and I quote, "After a discussion of matters pertaining to emergencies in the community," end quote, a telephone was to be installed in the school. So up until that time, there was no phone. November, the first bill came, it was $4.19. Now, school year 1943-44, due to overcrowding, it was decided to end the high school program. There was a total of 152 students in this 4-room school, 54 in grades 1, 2, and 3, 42 in grades 4, 5, and 6, 37 in grades 7 and 8, and finally 19 students in the 1-room 2-year high school. At the end of August 1944, the Mokena High School was dissolved. Most students traveled to Joliet and attend Joliet Township High School. Many were already attending their 3rd and 4th years there. Now, many parents and students wanted the high school to cease operation in the 30s, but overcrowding, and because of overcrowding and lack of high school facilities, the students were just not prepared for their junior and senior years at a larger school. The school board maintained that if the 2-year high school were dropped, most of the farm kids would not attend school beyond 8th grade. But finally, in 1944, after much discussion and argument, by the way, the board could not justify having a high school, and it was dissolved. Now, this is Mokena's last freshman class in school year 1943-44. And this is Mokena's last sophomore class of that school year. This is a train ride home from Joliet. That's majority of students rode the train to and from Joliet for their high school. And here's a picture of the students. There's my aunt, Ruth Shevlin, Horras. School year 1947-48. There's 4 sets of identical twins in school that year, 1 set in each classroom. And Mokena only had a population of 750 and a school population of 143. There must have been something in the water. Now on the bottom left, this is Jack and Jean Newton, Wesley and Warren Nelson, Ted and Tom Dunham, and my cousins, Jean and Joan Cooney, there on top. School year 47-48. Christmas play on the stage. As far back as I can find records, the school PTA or parent groups were putting on plays, operettas, and programs with the children. These were held in various meeting halls, churches, and finally on the school stage when it was constructed in 1929. In 1947, Mokena School District almost becomes part of a unit high school district. In 1947, the state of Illinois wants to decrease the number of school districts and increase the number of high schools. They want to accomplish this by forming unit school districts. It was proposed in December 1947 that all schools in Frankfort and New Lenox townships form a unit district. At this time, there were 9 school districts in the 2 townships. In May 1948, part of Green Garden and Manhattan Townships petitioned to join this venture. During the coming months, when the discussions were held, Green Garden drops out of the talks. In February 1949, an election was held to see what the voters wanted. Mokena voters wanted this school district. They knew their school needed improvements. They voted 134 to 58 for this proposal, but the consolidation was voted down by the other school districts. This is a slide of the Mokena News Bulletin from February 10th, and here are the results of the school district. The only good thing that came out of this was that this set up a discussion in February 1950 about starting a high school district in the area, and this resulted in the formation of Lincoln Way High School 210. But that's a whole nother discussion for a different time. This is the entire teaching staff for school year 1948-49. Left to right is Alice Coleman, Lois Schwensky, Elizabeth Koppel, the principal, right there, Hilda Schliemann, Mary Krause, and Ruby Wentley. Overcrowding, again, this is from school year 1949-50. This is the first grade class on the gym floor. In 1951, 2 classrooms were finally added to the north end of Carpenter Street School at a cost of $52,000. Finally, after 80 years, Mokena went from a 4-room school to a 6-room school. Now, this is a first 7-member school board. Now, this is what I was told. Up until 1950, the Mokena School District had less than 1,000 residents. Because of that, the district was only allowed a 3-member school board, and the county superintendent had total control of the district relating to curriculum and testing. The 1950 census showed that there were more than 1,000 residents in the district. This would allow the district to have a 7-member board and be a little bit more independent. In April 1952, this is the first election after the census, a 7-member school board was elected. Now, standing left to right, Mr. Hans Mueller, Gordon Bruce, Clyde Junker, and Tom Powers. And seated left to right, Lawrence Cole, Elmer Cooper, and John Scarth. Now, the school board for 1954-55 was also known as the Mokena Vagabonds basketball team. This is a photo of the Mokena Meteors for that school year. On the far right, this gentleman right here is Mr. Tony Dyna. He was the barber here in town for a long, long time. On March 19, 1955, these two groups met for a very special basketball game. This PTA-sponsored event pitted the school board, the Mokena Vagabonds, against the 7th and 8th grade Meteors. The Meteors won 35-34 in what was called a very thrilling game. Here's a slide of the Vagabonds preparing for that game. Now, this is the awarding of the trophy. Mokena basketball team got their trophy. Myrtle the Turtle. This is how Myrtle came into existence. Now, I understand that Myrtle is now located in the Mokena Junior High Art Department, but please remember, this is a basketball trophy and not an art project. April 1956, massive overcrowding forces the school board to propose a $110,000 building referendum. School classes are being held on the gym stage, the gym floor itself, and the Methodist church was being rented for the use as a first grade classroom. Some classes, mine included, had 44 students, and there was no such thing as teachers' aides. This is the first grade class. This is the first grade class in the Methodist church. Mrs. Pester is the teacher, and I believe this is Pam Mueller-Schoenweiss right here, and I'm sure they can, I'm sorry, there she is right there. And I'm sure people can recognize a lot of their parents and grandparents in here. Okay, this is school year 55-56. This is my third grade class. There was 40 students in this class and no teacher's aides. That's because we were very, very good. Didn't need them. So on Saturday, April 14th, 1956, the vote for the building referendum was held. It passed 400 yes to 70 no's. This $110,000 allowed the school board to purchase 10 acres of land at the end of 2nd Street on the west side of Wolf Road for $12,000, and the remaining $98,000 would be for site improvement and the construction of a building with 8 rooms, 8 classrooms, and an office. Now there is no photo of that original building. This is a 1964 photo. When the original Willowcrest School was built, it was this right here, 8 classrooms in a rectangle building. This wing was not on, and the gym was not on. Okay, in less than 8 months, the Willowcrest School was constructed. It had 8 rooms and an office. 6 of those rooms were for classes. 1 was used as a multi-purpose room, and 1 was a spare classroom. There was no gym. The students moved in January 1957. And because of this new school, the graduating class of 1961, which happened to be my graduation year, we were the last class to attend all 8 years at the Carpenter Street School. Everything changed in 1961. Now this is the Mokena Band. The current Mokena Band program was started in school year 1956-57 by a teacher named Glenn Myers. For the first several years, the band was practiced before the beginning of school. Now this is a photo of the 57-58 band, and this band was led by Perry Friedman. Perry is right here. And now for many years, Perry split his time between Frankfort School District and Mokena School District, teaching band and music in each district. Mokena Women Club opened a kindergarten. Now, in 1960, the Mokena Women's Club is formed for the sole purpose of starting a kindergarten. Classes start October 1960 at the Methodist Church. Now, once again, as with the 1930s band, the school board wants nothing to do with it. And they did not want a kindergarten. It was totally left up to the parents. Now, this is a photo of the class of 1961-62 kindergarten in the Methodist Church. And I'm sure people can recognize some of their parents and grandparents. But in 1965, the kindergarten was taken over by the Mokena school system. Now, the next boundary change came in 1963, 30 years after the last one. The Wheatendorf School District 154, which was down here, that was a school, that had combined with the Cleveland School, which was up at the corner of Wolf Road and Route 30. They had combined in 1943. That district was dissolved. This school was there. The Wheatendorf School was located on the northwest corner of Laraway and Wolf Road, where a Walgreens is now located. The school lands were split between Mokena and Frankfort school districts, and this brought the Mokena School District south from 203rd Street south to Route 30. And it went east like to Elsner Road and included some of the areas of Connecticut Hills and back up to what would be 203rd Street. Now, Wheatendorf School had a total of 43 students. 14 of those students came to Mokena. So this whole area, which is hard to believe now, from 203rd Street down to Route 30, only had 14 students in it. Now, this increased Mokena's enrollment to 442 in 1963. The other boundary change came when the Marley School District in New Lenox Township was being dissolved. The proposal for splitting the Marty school population between the New Lenox and Mokena was not welcome at all by the school trustees. Over their vigorous objections, the Will County School Board trustees voted to attach the Mokena School Districts the land south of the proposed Interstate 80, right here, to what would be the extension of 191st Street. Now, this area is known as Rolling Heights. At the time, it only added 6 students, but all the land was subdivided and ready for development. Now, because of these two consolidations, this one and this one, Mokena got its first school bus. Up until that time, you were either taken to school by your parents or friends, or you walked. On Saturday, April 16, 1968, a $250,000 school bond referendum was voted on. The bond issue passed 313 to 211. These bonds would allow the school board to purchase an additional 21 acres of land north and east of Willowcrest School and allow the building in 1969 of a primary school. Mokena would now have 31 acres of land west of Wolf Road for future development. In the school year 55-56, there was approximately 250 students and no kindergarten. In 1964, the enrollment reaches 500 in grades 1 through 8. In school year 70-71, there was now a kindergarten or over 800 students in the Mokena school system. This is an increase of over 300% in 15 years. Now, because of this meteoric rise in enrollment, additions were put on Willowcrest School in 1960, 64, 67, and 74. But somehow, during this rapid construction, the school board was able to rent 2 schoolrooms to the Homer Township School District to help them relieve their overcrowding during their construction of new schools. Now, in 1969, the primary school is added to the school complex, and the Carpenter Street School was now being used as a kindergarten. Now, during the 60s, because of all the Willowcrest School additions and the primary school, it seemed as if the school had a permanent construction staff. The last boundary change, this came in 1971, when Mokena and Frankfort school districts mutually agreed to a land swap. Mokena gave Frankfort the land north of Route 30 and east of what is now Frankfort Township offices up to Elsner Road and Hickory Creek. This area is now known as Butternut Subdivision. Now, Mokena received the land south of Route 30, here's Route 30, from Town Line Road to Wolf Road, south to Old Plank Trail. In 1976, Carpenter Street School is sold to the Village of Mokena for use as its municipal building, and it's still being used as that for that purpose. This was probably taken in about 1985. You can see the original 4 rooms right here, and this right here are the 2 rooms that were added in 1951 to make it a 6-room school. 1975, a large addition was put on the primary school. And this is a photo of December 12, 1976, the junior high groundbreaking. 1978, enrollment in Mokena schools reaches 1,000 for the first time. And now finally in 1978, the junior high on 195th Street is completed. This is an aerial view of the junior high on 195th Street. 1979, the first personal computers were purchased for the school district. Now, this is a 1985 aerial view of the campus. Here are the original 8 rooms that were built in 1955. And the additions, you can see one addition was here, they extended that addition there, and then one to the north, finally the gym. The primary school was in this area here, and of course the junior high was up here. Now, if you remember, or maybe you don't, in the early 1980s, there was a deep recession, and this called major reduction in home building in the Mokena area. No more schoolrooms were needed for a while. But by the end of the 1980s, the developers really found Mokena. In 1993, enrollment reaches 1,500, and the schools are again overcrowded. So much so, on March 15, 1994, a referendum was placed on the ballot for approval of an $8,400,000 bond issue to build 24 classrooms and a new gym. This would connect the Mokena Elementary School and the Willowcrest schools together. Now, the bond issue passed, and this is the result. That last referendum, that $8 million, was this area right here. The primary school was here, and the original Willowcrest school is right here. So you can still see that if you pull into the parking lot. The left side is the original building. Now, 1997, the enrollments surged past 2,000. Again, more room was needed. Since 1958, the campus has gone from this thing right here to this, which is pretty much what it looks like today. Now, as the calendar rolled over to about the year 2000, a $17.8 million referendum was passed for a new junior high school. This school was located next to the Grassmere Park, north of LaPorte Road, and opened in 2001 with 819 students. And this is a view of that junior high. Now, in school year 2002-2003 saw an enrollment of 2,400 students and a staff of 250 with a budget of $12 million. Now, this is the same school district that over 175 years ago had 26 students and maybe a budget of $200. So that's how we got to this point, from a little area in here to this. Thank you very much. I hope you learned something. Thanks again.
Well, Mr. Horras, I appreciate you taking the time to put all this together. As a parent who has a student going through this district now, I think it's really important to understand the history of it, understand how we got to where we are, and that it's not just you wake up, you send your kid off. It's been a long process and a hard process for those involved, I'm sure, to get through all this. But really good information. I thought one thing that really stuck out is you mentioned about thanking your grandfather for adding those additional tax dollars to the 159 district. And a lot of people don't realize once you get north of that whole stretch of 45, all those dollars are going to the other tax districts. So that's a really, that's the Brookhaven, that whole market or area there, which is, it's a lot of revenue coming in.
See, people don't understand why Mokena School District doesn't go out that far. They have to go back to the 1850s and 60s to realize the farmers, the kids had to walk to school or ride a horse. So what school is closer?
Yeah.
And the Summit Hill School was on what is now 191st Street. So some of those areas, just north of 191st Street, it was closer for them to go to Summit Hill than go to Mokena. So, and you've got 800 people in the township. They all knew everybody. Mm-hmm. They all knew each other. A lot of them were related. Say, okay, well, here's the boundary line. Your kid goes here, everybody else goes here. That's how it was.
Yeah.
That's just how everything got set up.
Great information. Really appreciate all of the time that's gone into this, and I hope the school does too. And this is something that the school will continue to share for a long time to understand. Well,
I intend on giving them a flash drive with this program on it, and eventually I do want to print something in a loose leaf folder and give them a physical copy of this too.
Great. Well, thank you again. This has been very
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.